Hello everyone! In today's YouTube tutorial, I will be teaching you guys how to model terrain in Blender 3D. I'll be breaking this up into four parts, including making terrain, texturing the terrain, covering the terrain in foliage, and finishing up with some lighting and rendering. I'm going to be using a couple free assets in this tutorial, and I'll tell you when I'm using them and put the links in the description. We'll also be using the ANT mesh generator and add-on for Blender. We're going to start by deleting the default cube, going to Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, Community, A.N.T. You'll see Ant Landscape Generator, so it's basically Add Mesh. And you can just check to install and click Save Preferences. I already have it installed, so I'm not going to do that. Next, we're going to do Shift plus A, Mesh, and then click Landscape. Next, we're going to click here, another noise tool. Click on that, change the operator preset to Billow. Now I got some nice rolling hills. Well, it'll work. Now that I have this, you can go around and mess around with these settings, such as changing the height and being able to have like high mountains and whatever sort of stuff you want. I'm going to change that back to 0.3 and get right into this. So, here's our terrain. Next, this step is going to be texturing. We're going to go over here to Textures, add a new, and we want it to be base color, image texture. I'll be including these textures in the description. We're going to open Pictures, Muddy Ground, and I'll be using this one, just the normal. So now we're going to take this one, and we're going to go into the Shading tab, and we're going to scroll into it, and we're on Material View, and we cannot see the texture. It should be a dirt texture. The reason for this is because it is not UV unwrapped. And if you don't know about this, I have another tutorial about this, and I'll put the link in the description as well. Basically, this tells the textures where they should be and what the mesh looks like on a 2D surface. So we're going to do UV unwrap, and it's going to take a couple minutes. Okay, now that it's unwrapped, you can go back into the Shading tab and see we have our dirt texture all over the terrain. However, it is very low res because it is not being multiplied many times over the terrain at all. In fact, it's not even being multiplied, it's being probably amplified. So we're going to go over to UV editing, make sure all the faces are selected, and just scale it up a bunch. This will just make it so that the terrain, the image texture will be multiplied over the terrain more times. So we can go back into the Shading tab, and we can see that we've got our dirt texture is really becoming high resolution, and we can really start to see the look of the dirt. We want to scale this up a little bit more. Scaling this up will really tell a lot about the size of your terrain. If you have it scaled down very low, people will think that the terrain is a small area of ground just because of the size of the dirt. But if you scale it up a lot, and they get to see very small particles, they'll think that it is a large area because the dirt texture is being amplified. So we're going to scale it up a little bit more because I want this to be a large area. Scroll up here and we can see our landscape. So we can see our dirt texture and it's looking pretty good. I still want it to look a little bit smaller, so we're going to scale it up a lot. And shading, there we go. Nice texture. So next what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this image texture, add in my roughness, plug the roughness into the roughness, Shift A, bump, add the bump, and plug the color also into the height, and the normal into the normal. So now we have a very nice dirt texture, and if you scroll out, you can see that how many times it's multiplied over the terrain, but since you will rarely be making renders like this, it doesn't really matter that you see all these squares. It almost looks like Minecraft. So now that we have this, once you scroll in, you can really start seeing that the dirt looks 3D, and it's a pretty nice texture. You can download this, and I will also be putting the link in the description for the roughness and the albedo. So, next thing we're going to do is, now that we've got our ground texture, is we're going to position the camera. We want this to be a lot closer because we're not showing the entire terrain, we're showing a small area. We'll move it down and scale it down and get this positioned somewhere in the terrain into an area that I like that I will be using for this tutorial. Okay, now that I have my camera positioned, I'm going to start setting up the terrain for foliage. So, the first one we're going to go to is the vertex group. Tap into weight paint mode, and we're going to start painting all over the terrain where we want to have grass growing. So, I think I want grass covering the entire area where my camera is. And I'm just going to give you a quick crash course of the weight painting. So basically, where it's red is where the grass will be more dense, and where it is yellow, less dense, green, less dense, light blue, very not dense at all. So, kind of intuitive. So we're just going to paint this area. And since I kind of want it all over, and I don't really care about the density that much, I'm just going to cover the entire terrain in the camera area to a nice red. Because that will say that to the computer that I want thick grass everywhere where it's painted. So we're just painting this onto this vertex group right here, and you don't even have to click sign, which is a lot different than other methods that I've seen before. So, now that we have that, we might actually want to do this. We're going to want to go over here to draw, subtract, scale down the brush size, and just draw it in here like a path. And we want the path kind of going over here and over the hills. So now we've got a path that goes over the hills, and it looks really nice. So that gives us kind of a perspective of what we're looking at, and you can go over here and just make sure that since we're out of the camera view, we don't want any of the long blades of grass showing up where the rest of this is. So we'll just draw that, and it goes through the terrain very nicely. So that will be a path, and you can see how that works. And you might want it a little bit like that to seem a little natural. Okay, perfect. So now that you have that, go into the particle properties, hit plus, rename it to grass, hit hair, vertex groups, density, group. Now we can go back here and name this group grass to keep us on target. So now we can go and scroll around and we can see that on our path we don't really have any of these blades, and that is because we click less. However, we can see something there and we want to maybe remove that a little bit, like that, and like that, and perfect. There we go, we've got a bunch of grass. Now, you could say, this doesn't look like grass, this looks like sticks, and it looks ugly. So, yeah, you're right, it does look bad. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back into object mode. We're going to click here, right-click, new collection, call it grass. Now, in this grass collection, what we want to do is we want to add in our grass. I will also be putting the link in the description, like I said. Append. And just take it from wherever you put it. I think mine is in Windows, local disk, terabyte, Blender projects, and grass wild. Go into collections and take grass everything. That will just take all the grass and put it right into there. And so now we have that. So now we have the grass, and we want to take this empty because we don't want that put all over our terrain, like that. Now we're going to turn back on the view on that. Select everything in this collection and just pull it down so it is out of our view in the camera. So now we have that. I'm going to save my project, call it grass on hill, and save Blender file. Next, I'm going to go over here to the particles tab, click render, path, change it to collection, instance collection, grass everything. Now we have the grass all over our terrain, and we can see we kind of got our path here. But the reason that it's covering it is because there's a lot of grass, because I have it turned up to 1,000, and the size is like that. Now, this is another thing, like I was saying, with the dirt, the perspective on how big the terrain is really comes from the foliage and things like texturing. Otherwise, no one really knows. So we're going to scale this down to something like 0.01, And that looks like a nice size for the grass. You can always click out, and you can see we've got our path coming through here, and that is the size that the grass will be in the viewport. We're going to save it, and I'm going to change this up to something like 10,000, just to give us a view of like how large this will be. So there's 10,000 blades of grass, and we're seeing that because of the amount of grass that I put in there, it's kind of encroaching on our path. You could go in to weight painting mode and adjust that, but you know, it looks a little natural. I mean, wouldn't there be some grassy patches in a path? Sure, of course there would. Now, you can see that's kind of coming up in a little bit of an orderly fashion. We don't want it to be too orderly, so let's change it down to 1000 again. Go over here to render. Actually, no. Click advanced. Select rotation, and change the velocity from hair to something that still makes it stand upright. See, X doesn't work. Y, Z should work. And now we're going to randomize it. So it spins it around so they're at random angles. And there we go. It's more random. Save it. Change it back and crank it back up to 10,000. And let's see what it looks like. There we go. Looks nice. Looks wild. It's wild grass. Let's go with it. Okay, so now that we have that, 10,000 looks good, but I want it thick. I want lots of grass. So let's change this to viewport ticked off. So that way it speeds up our viewport, but it still has the grass in the render. If you turn off the camera, it won't be in the render. If you accidentally did that, just uncheck it, and it will be in the render. And likewise with the viewport, just check it again, and you bring it back into the viewport. The reason why I'm going to uncheck this is because 10,000 blades of grass really slow down my workflow and the viewport. So uncheck that, see how it looks like there. Change the number. Change the number up to something like 30,000. And that will be put into the render. Next, we have our grass. We want our trees. So we're going to go back into weight painting mode. And I don't want trees everywhere, and I kind of want to have them just on the side so we can still see our grass and path. So I'm going to put them like, we're actually going to change that back from subtract to a draw, and we're going to add it right here, and we're going to scale that brush, something like that, and you'll see that we're going to start getting trees along wherever we put this, as soon as we do the same thing that we did with the grass. So since I'm not having a path with trees going through it, we're just going to put it on the sidelines, kind of like where we think we put the path. Of course, we're going to want it up on the horizon. And there we go. So we can scale that brush down again. Call this group trees. Go into particles tab. Add a new particle setting. Call it trees. Click hair. Density. Trees. Now it's going to show you exactly where it's going to be. And we don't want this many trees. That's crazy. It's thick, that would look almost like grass all over again. We want to have like 100 trees in the scene maybe, or maybe something more like 200. So now that we have that, save the file, go into object mode, select advanced, click rotation so we can go back to that later, and render it as a collection. Now I don't have a trees collection yet, so what we're going to do is new collection, call it trees, file, append, local disk, Blender projects, and I want to grab the tree that I had before. I will also put the link to this in the description. So we want trees.blend, should work, and I'll take a collection, and I'll take the trees one. So now we have our trees, and I only have one tree, so the more you put in there, the more variety of trees we have, but I kind of want it just like this. Select this, collection, change that, instance collection to trees, and boom, we've got trees. Next, we're going to want to change that rotation to Y, and now we've got trees that are standing up. Change the scale again down to 0.01. That looks good. So now we can see that we've got our trees in our scene, and the grass is obviously going to be running through here, and I think that looks really good. Now, To see what it's going to look like together, we're going to go back here, change that back down to something more friendly, like 1000, save it, and allow that into the viewport. Okay, so we can compare the scaling, and I think it looks really good. Now, we've got our trees, we've got our grass, and what else do we need? I think some rocks would be good. Some rocks really add some variety there, so we're going to turn those off. And also go into weight paint mode again. We're going to go to vertex group, add a new vertex group, call it rocks. And we're going to say, I want some rocks here. Let's scale that up a little bit. Rocks there, I want some rocks there. I want some rocks on that hill. And you don't need a lot of rocks because rocks are really random. And like that. And there we go. We've got our weight painting area for the rocks. We're going to add a new one of these real quick. Change that to rocks. And you guys know the drill. Turn it to hair, check advanced, but you don't really need that because rocks are round and sort of things. And we're going to check rotation and vertex groups or density, change that to the rocks one. And you can see that's coming out right where we put the rock ones. And change that something down to like 100. Change the render to path collection, and we're also going to need to add a new collection. Obviously, I will be putting these rocks in the description. Hold on, new collection, call that rocks. And now we're going to append our rocks. This is going to come from Blend Swap, and I will also put the link in the description. Downloads, I think I have it. Here we go, the rocks.blend. Take the object, and they will have their materials append, and they're going to go right into the rocks folder here. And we don't want the camera or the plane. And then we're going to take these rocks, and we want to get them out of our scene right now. Go over here, check our terrain, collection, instance collection, rocks. So they're huge. We're going to scale them down to 0.01 to go along with the rest of the scale. And if we want larger rocks, because there can be boulders, we can go like that. And I think I like the look of that. Save. And now we've got rocks, trees, and grass. Looks great. Now we have all the foliage, we've got the texture, we've got the terrain. We need to move on to lighting. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I can click on the World tab here. We're going to change the color to an environment texture, and then we're going to select our picture. So we're going to go to pictures. I have some environment textures, and I will also put the link in the description. And sky. I want that one. Okay, save it. We want to change our render engine from EVE to cycles. And check rendered view. Now, without any lights at all, there's still going to be light because of the environment texture. But if we want some different type of lighting, feel free to add a sun, and I will do that as well. So let's take a look at what this looks like. Now, an important thing to keep in mind when we're doing something like this is that we're only going to see in the render stuff that is in this dotted line. So the stuff out here and stuff above there, the sky, it's not going to be in the picture. So go back into material view, and you can really get a view of what we're going to be seeing in the render now. You know, I can see only pixels, but I have a feeling this is going to be looking good. So we can see our grass, we've got our rocks and our trees. The trees aren't really random, but I don't think it really matters that much right now because it'll be alright because we don't get to see the tops that much. And you can see we only have a little bit of grass. That's because I turned it down when we were in the particles tab. So let's go back to particles, and we can check off this. Actually, we can check off the grass, and we're going to want that to be something more thick, like 30,000. And 30,000, perfect. So, the last step that we're going to be doing here is we're going to be setting up the lighting. So, we're going to just turn off the trees real quick, and that. I'm going to be showing you guys some very quick volumetric lighting. So, Shift A, Mesh, cube. We've got the cube, and it's actually filling this entire area, which is exactly what we want. And move it like that. We're going to go to shading. We're going to go click new. We're going to call this, delete that, and Shift A, principled volume. Plug the volume into the volume, not the surface. And we've got some shade. Turn on the render view. And cycles does take a while rendering volumes, depending on what sort of processors you have. So just be patient. And there we go. We already have some mist. And I'm liking it, but it's a little dense. So I'll turn that down to something like 0.5. And depending on the size of your cube, you might have to change it down or up to get the same sort of density that I'm going to be getting in this render. So that really adds some environmental lighting, which is really nice. And you're going to be like, well, this looks very nice and all, but it's kind of dreary. That's because we haven't added our sun yet. It's only using the lighting coming from the environmental texture. So what we're going to do now, Shift A, image. Actually, no. Whoops, what was I thinking? We want a light, and we want a sun. Sun should be good. Yeah. Keep in mind, if you want like some perfect light rays and such, you can go add a point light, put some things in front of it, and like the trees, and then it will shine through the mist. I haven't actually gotten that completely working yet, so I'm just going to be working with what I'm comfortable with in this tutorial. And we're just going to go like this, rotate it like that. And that's what the angle of the sun is going to be coming through. I'm going to change this color to something more warm and inviting, like a yellow hue. And like that. And we can now go into render view, scroll in a little bit so we see what we're really going to be seeing in the render, and select the collection so we still can see this here, and see what the render looks like. It's looking pretty good, but I think I want some more light, so we can change something up to like 4.0, and we'll see we got a nice golden light coming through here. It's really making this a warm environment because of our volume shader. Also, if you think it's like a little too dense of a volume, you can always turn that down a little bit in your shading tab. So, now that we've got that, we want to go over here, save the project, click the particles, and just check them on. Except for if you ever get like something in here with the rocks, just move it out and it will no longer be in that collection. And it's a lot easier to work with. The rocks also somehow got my sun in there. I'm going to want to remove that. And there we go. We've got our rocks. And we're select this. So I'm really like the way this is starting out. And I'm going to just go back into viewport shading. We can even go over here and do vertex groups. Check those off. Okay. Let's go over here to cycles. I'm just running on a laptop, so we're going to change that down to 64. We're going to make sure to check on denoising. You're going to want light paths. I'm going to leave it just at 12 because I'm using some nice light. But I'm going to turn off reflective and refractive. And those basically are just for like in pools when the water is shining through and you see those weird things on the floor. That's what that is. We don't need that right now. I'm going to go to performance and just down to 30 by 40. You don't have to do these. These are just for purposes from my computer. And color management, I think that is all we're going to need. Can go over here, make this, export onto the desktop. Can I call this hills? Accept, and we're going to change this from PNG. Yeah, we're going to leave it there. We can have override on, and just to 1, so it only renders 1 frame. Here's the size of our image. I can crank that down to like something like 70, so it renders a lot faster. Obviously, if actually, we want to keep that somewhere high because of the volume. We want to render volumes right. And then we can click over here, make sure everything's right, save it, and then we're going to want to render the animation. Alright, everyone. Thanks for sticking with me, and I hope this helps with everything that you want to do with your terrain making. And if you have any questions, be sure to drop them down in the comments, and I will respond. Thanks, guys.